Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into Season 10 of our What If Goku Was Betrayed and Locked Inside the Hyperbolic Time Chamber series. Before you guys flame me in the comments, episode 57 is dropping in just 2 days, okay? This video is for everyone who wants to catch up on episodes 52 to 56, all in one movie. If you're new to the series, I suggest starting from episode 1. The like ratio we've been getting on each episode is insane. You guys have been smashing the like goal in just 1 to 2 days. For this video, let's aim for 350 likes. Alright, don't forget to leave a comment letting me know if you've enjoyed the series so far. With that, let's get started. The sight caught Akumu off guard. His face mirrored his shock. Such a scenario was beyond anyone's expectations. It was as though everything had been arranged just for this moment, creating the perfect conditions for what was to come. And there it was, amidst the chaos of swirling energy, the second portion of the aquafoam. It danced around Goku, a spectacular display of power and beauty. It was then that Amuku had a thought that puzzled him deeply. Is this what the Omni King really wants? Could it be possible to draw it out from him? Initially, the Omni King had made it clear that for the aquafoam to fully manifest, both Goku and Vegeta, who each harbored separate half of the same aquafoam within, would need to become one, merge it into its pure original form. Yet, now this strategy was as good as gone with the wind. For some unknown reason, each half of the aquafoam are rejecting to merge with each other. Zeno's theory was that this was due to the Saiyans' change in nature. This was due to the path the Saiyan have chosen to follow. One chose destruction and the other chose neutrality. The aquafoam must have bonded with them in a way that made fusing impossible due to its constant rejection. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Amuku reached out to the Omni King telepathically, a connection spanning across dimensions, right from the depths of the Saiyan's psyche. He relayed his discovery to Zeno with a sense of urgency. Zeno-sama, ever so composed, couldn't help but feel a wave of disappointment wash over him. Yet another unforeseen obstacle had emerged, thwarting his plans. It had escaped his calculations that the Saiyans would unlock the full potential of the aquafoam. Moreover, their bond with the aquafoam, a connection that could only stem from the purest of hearts, was something he hadn't anticipated. Nevertheless, the purity of heart was of little concern to the Omni King. His eyes were set on a single prize, the aquafoam, the key to unlocking the fountain that led to the eternal realm, the dwelling of his parents. My plans have to be revised again, the Omni King muttered in frustration. Turning to Amuku, he inquired, when you ventured into his psyche, you observed the aquafoam dispersing around him, correct? Yes, my lord, Amuku responded, his voice laced with curiosity. It behaved unusually, not adhering to the patterns we recognize as divine aura. That's because it isn't supposed to, Zeno explained with a hint of impatience. The term divine aura is merely a label for a subset of angelic and destructive energies. The aquafoam, however, is derived from the essence of my father. It is his tears. That liquid fell from his eyes when I was conceived. He had tears only once. That is why that substance is the only thing capable of unveiling the path to the eternal realm. Pausing for a moment, the Omni King shared a truth known to very few. Amuku, heed my words carefully. Despite appearances, I am not the true king of everything. That title belongs to my father. I am merely a king in training, a placeholder until I am destined to ascend to his position. This illusion of rule is part of my trial, a period during which my father remains hands-off. My foresight is unmatched, my predictions unerring. Yet, my singular flaw lies in my inability to foresee beyond the moment someone defies those very predictions. This is my weakness and my greatest shame. The Omni King confided with a rare hint of vulnerability. Let me be clear, I am an omnipotent being, one possessing power beyond compare, even surpassing that of my father who is the current true king of everything. Yet, where he embodies the ultimate wisdom, I find myself lacking. He is the epitome of knowledge, an omniscient being, and it is in this aspect that my trial lies. I must eclipse my father's intellect and aspire to omniscience myself. Only by becoming both all-knowing and all-powerful can I truly inherit the mantle of the true king of everything from my father. This revelation left Amuku, the Daishiken, and all the angelic priests reeling. Such profound insight was overwhelming, particularly for the Grand Priest, who had not anticipated any of this. He realized, with a jolt of clarity, how little he truly understood. Barely a year ago, he had only just learned of Zeno's parents, followed by the ambitious goal to breach the eternal realm. Now, this staggering disclosure reshaped his entire understanding of his existence. The Grand Priest had always believed his purpose was to serve the Omni King, to cater to his whims and desires. Yet, the knowledge he had just been imparted with illuminated his true purpose. He was not merely created to serve. His existence was intrinsically tied to aiding Zeno in overcoming his trial. His real purpose was to facilitate the transformation of Zeno into the true king of everything. With this newfound understanding, the Grand Priest recognized that nothing else could compare in importance, not his children, not the multiverse as it could be recreated anew, not even his own existence, for he could be replaced if necessary. Nothing was to stand in the way of Zeno's ascension beyond his father's legacy. "Amuku," Zeno said with a commanding tone, "show me what you have seen." "Of course, my lord, I would love to, but the distance is too far," Amuku replied, his voice tinged with regret. "Telepathic communication is one thing, but projecting my thoughts outside your pocket dimension is too much for my current abilities." Zeno rose from his throne, his expression determined. "Then I'll join you," he declared. "My lord, you mustn't," the Grand Priest interjected, his voice filled with concern. "Shouldn't we serve you instead? How about sending me?" "No," Zeno replied firmly. "I realize now that I've been going about this all wrong. This is a trial for me, and all this time, I've been commanding you and my other subjects to do everything in my stead. It's time I, the future king of everything, get my hands dirty." The Grand Priest, visibly shocked by this unexpected change in the Omni King, nodded slowly. "Okay then, allow me to join you." Zeno nodded in agreement, then turned back to Amuku. "Amuku," he called out, "is this the same chase for Vegeta as well?" "I'm unsure, my lord," Amuku confessed, his tone earnest. "This was so intriguing that I decided to contact you immediately. I apologize for my negligence. I should have confirmed this right away." "Okay," Zeno replied. "Both the Grand Priest and I will be there in 1 minute. In the meantime, confirm if it is the same for Vegeta." With that, the telecommunication ended. At Zeno's command, the Grand Priest swiftly opened a portal linking Zeno's palace to Amuku's exact location. Without hesitation, they stepped through. Amuku, who had been projecting his consciousness into Goku's psyche, returned to his own body. Without wasting another moment, he placed his finger on Vegeta's forehead, attempting to do the same. However, he soon found that entering Vegeta's psyche proved much more of a challenge. Amuku chuckled lightly as he sensed the formidable mental barrier in front of him. "Well, this is interesting. This Sane, even in this state, manages to maintain his mental fortitude." His laughter echoed slightly, amused by the challenge before him. "Okay then, Sane. I admit, your mental strength far surpasses that Sane over there, but when it comes to me, you're out of your league, boy." With a surge of his energy, or ki, Amuku pushed harder, finally breaking through Vegeta's mental defenses. He had successfully projected his consciousness into the mind of Vegeta. However, the landscape of Vegeta's mind was starkly different from Goku's. It was harsh and vivid, reflecting a warrior who trained relentlessly, even within his own psyche. In contrast, Goku's inner world was calm and relaxing, dominated by thoughts of sleep and food. "Fascinating," murmured Amuku as he navigated this new, rugged mental terrain. He began searching for the Ultra Instinct aura he had detected in Goku, but it was absent in Vegeta. Instead, he stumbled upon a different divine aura, one that seemed familiar yet distinctly more refined and pure than what he had felt years ago. "Is this truly destruction energy?" Amuku exclaimed, his voice a mix of excitement and disbelief. This aura was nothing like those wielded by the so-called weak gods of destruction. The only one of those fools who had decent potential was that Beerus fellow, and that Arak fellow too. His aura felt weird. But this boy, his aura, it outclasses them by a landslide. It's as if he has not only mastered it but perfected it beyond perfection. Amuku was in shock. He had never imagined that destruction energy could reach such an advanced state. Driven by his newfound curiosity, Amuku followed the aura trail, just as he had with Goku. It led him directly to Vegeta's exact location. And just like with Goku, the aquafoam had dispersed from within Vegeta, now fully enveloping him like the very air he breathed. "There it is," Amuku murmured with a hint of triumph, "the second half of the aquafoam. Zeno will be pleased to hear this. I better be there to greet him." Just then, Amuku sensed the precise moment when both the Grand Priest and Zeno entered his domain. His exceptional spatial awareness alerted him to their arrival. Interestingly, even though Amuku's mind was elsewhere, projected into Vegeta's psyche, his body was far from defenseless. This was due to his mastery of the Ultra Instinct technique, which allowed his body to act and react independently, without the need for conscious thought. Given that Amuku himself had developed Ultra Instinct, it was fascinating to consider the extent of his proficiency with it. After confirming that both Saiyans were experiencing similar phenomena, Amuku decided it was time to return to his own body, ready to welcome Zeno once more. The scene then shifted, taking us back in time. We find ourselves at a critical moment when Moro, the notorious Planet Eater, steps aboard his ship, prepared to launch a fateful journey toward planet Vegeta. After sensing a massive energy spike on planet Vegeta, Moro became curious about the cause of this disturbance. Months had passed back on planet Vegeta, and during that time, Broly and Yamoshi had defeated a formidable evil Saiyan and restored peace to their world. In honor of their valor, King Salada, the ruler of the time, proclaimed them heroes and erected statues to commemorate their victories, one for Broly as the legendary Super Saiyan, and another for Yamoshi as the first Super Saiyan god. In the training hall, the air was charged with intense energy as Broly trained under Yamoshi's watchful eye. Although Broly's power was immense, Yamoshi's skill and technique far surpassed him. In every sparring match in their base forms, Yamoshi would emerge victorious, showcasing his superior combat skills. Broly, bursting with raw ki, was already incredibly powerful. However, Yamoshi believed that to enhance Broly's abilities further, it was crucial to teach him the proper techniques that embodied the true fighting essence of the Saiyan race. By mastering these skills, Broly could potentially unlock even greater levels of his transformational power. Their shared goal was ambitious, to reach the final transformation available to a Saiyan without the intervention of God Ki, known as the legendary Super Saiyan 6. This ultimate form represented the pinnacle of Saiyan potential. A few days had passed, and on the serene training grounds of planet Vegeta, a regular sparring session under the watchful eye of Yamoshi was abruptly disrupted. The skies darkened, and a cold silence enveloped the area as an ominous spaceship pierced the atmosphere, its descent marking the arrival of an unwelcome guest. Yamoshi, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and resolve, recognized the distinctive markings on the hull. "It's Moro, the Planet Eater. He has finally come," he muttered under his breath, his voice carrying a weight of destiny and dread. Moro's reputation preceded him. Tales of his previous visits were the stuff of nightmares, stories told to Saiyan warriors as warnings of ultimate defeat. Each time Moro visited, he left the planet weaker, its defenders humiliated and drained of their strength. His ability to drain life energy was unparalleled, making him a feared name across the galaxies. As Moro's ship landed, the atmosphere among the Saiyans was one of palpable fear mixed with a forced respect for the power the warlock wielded. The Saiyans, known for their pride and fighting spirit, lined up in 2 straight rows, creating a pathway from the ship to the palace. Their expressions were grim, each warrior internally battling the instinct to fight against the submission to a force greater than themselves. King Salada, current ruler of planet Vegeta, hurriedly mobilized his elite guards and strategists, preparing the defenses of his palace. However, as he faced his people, his mask of confidence barely concealed the dread within. This was not a battle they had prepared for, not like this. Moro stepped out of his ship, flanked by his menacing crew, each step measured, his eyes scanning the assembly of warriors before him. The Saiyans watched in silent defiance and fear as Moro walked down the makeshift aisle, his presence demanding submission. Reaching the end of the rows, Moro stood before King Salada. The air was thick with tension as the king greeted him, his voice lacking its usual command. "Welcome, Lord Moro. To what do we owe the honor of your visit?" Moro's laugh was low and chilling. "Do I need a reason to visit a planet that has entertained me so well in the past?" His gaze was piercing, and his voice held a hint of amusement mixed with a threatening undertone. "But since you ask, I sensed a surge of power on your little world. I came to see this disturbance for myself. You know I cannot resist adding more strength to my own." The Saiyans shifted uneasily, their hands itching for the hilts of their weapons, yet knowing full well the futility of resistance. The king bowed slightly, his voice a whisper of surrender. "Of course, my lord." Moro's gaze then turned cold and commanding. "Then tell me, King Salada, where is this power that beckoned me from across the stars? Surely you would not dare conceal such a prize from me." King Salada's face drained of color, the pressure of the moment weighing heavily upon him. With nowhere to turn and his warriors' eyes upon him, he stuttered, I am not sure what you sense, Lord Moro. We have no such power here." Moro's expression darkened, his patience wearing thin. "Do not insult my intelligence, Salada. Your planet has sparked my interest not once but several times. Now, tell me where it hides, or I shall take what I want by force." As the tension reached its peak, King Salada was painfully aware of the hopelessness of their situation. With a heavy heart, he began to kneel, submitting to Moro's will in an effort to spare his people from the warlock's wrath. The sight of their king humiliated spurred whispers of dissent among the Saiyans, but fear of Moro's power held them back. It was at this moment, with King Salada kneeling before Moro, that Yamoshi could no longer contain himself. Striding forward, his aura began to crackle with energy, drawing the eyes of every Saiyan, and Moro's keen interest. "Enough, Moro! Our king will not bow to you today, nor any day." Yamoshi declared, his voice thundering across the field. The air was thick with tension. The very atmosphere seemed to crackle with the impending storm of power and fury. Moro, his features twisted in anger, stared down at the gathered Saiyans with contempt. His initial urge was to obliterate the planet from existence, a swift end to an annoyance. Yet he held back, his eyes narrowing as he focused on Yamoshi, the Saiyan who dared to rise against him. Moro's pride would not allow him to simply destroy. He had to dominate and humiliate. Moro stepped forward, his aura flaring menacingly, causing his soldiers to instinctively take a step back. With a dismissive wave of his hand, he commanded them to stand down. "I will handle this myself," he declared, his voice resonating with dark power. His gaze fixed on Yamoshi, who stood defiantly, his own energy beginning to surge in anticipation. "Once again, I shall teach you the folly of your ways," Moro sneered, recalling the ease with which he had subdued the Saiyan in their last encounter. "No matter how much power you've gained, it will never be enough. You are but a speck beneath my heel. You Saiyans have grown arrogant," Moro continued, his voice rising with each word. "A year without my presence, and you fools allow yourselves to think you've escaped the food chain. How utterly pathetic. It seems I must remind you of the natural order, where Moro, the planet eater, reigns supreme." Just as Yamoshi's muscles tensed for an imminent attack, a firm hand landed on his shoulder, halting him. It was Broly, whose presence was as calm as it was sudden. Yamoshi turned slightly to face him, noting the untouched casualness in Broly's eyes, as if the impending battle was nothing but a mild inconvenience. Broly had felt the surge of energy while in the midst of a simple meal, a turkey leg still gripped in his other hand, and decided to investigate. Moro, for all his might, didn't even register as a threat on Broly's scale of concern. His mind was occupied with a much larger problem, returning to his own time. Broly was a warrior out of time, inadvertently dragged to the past where he did not belong. His main concern wasn't the battle at hand, but rather finding a way back to his rightful place in the timeline. The kingdom's most brilliant minds, under the direct command of the king, had been tirelessly working on unraveling the complexities of temporal movement, a concept hitherto thought impossible. Broly's unexpected arrival in the past had presented them with an unprecedented challenge and opportunity. The researchers pored over ancient texts and conducted risky experiments, yet the solution remained elusive, always just out of reach. The researchers needed more time that Broly was increasingly feeling he didn't have. The urgency of his mission to return to his own era was palpable. Moro's untimely arrival and his notorious reputation for chaos only compounded Broly's anxiety. The last vivid memories before being pulled back in time were haunting. Goku and Vegeta, lifeless on the battlefield. The uncertainty of their fate gnawed at him. The potential loss of such formidable warriors and dear comrades was unthinkable. Broly knew not the why or the who of his temporal displacement, but he was determined to return, to ensure no one could further jeopardize his home, his time. For that, Moro had to be dealt with decisively. "Yamoshi, let me take this one," Broly suggested, his voice calm yet carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "It's the least I can do for the king, considering all the resources he's exhausted trying to help me return. Besides," he added, his eyes narrowing slightly with a mix of determination and newfound confidence, "I've grown considerably stronger. Let's see how effective your teachings have been." Yamoshi, understanding the stakes and recognizing the silent, fierce resolve in Broly's eyes, smiled and nodded. He powered down, his energy signature dimming as he stepped back, giving Broly the forefront in this battle. Yamoshi had always known that while Broly might still need refinement in skill and technique, his raw power was unmatched. The sheer magnitude of energy he could harness was something Yamoshi had rarely seen, even among the elite warriors of their race. "Show him what you've learned, Broly. Make him understand the power of the Saiyans," Yamoshi encouraged, his voice filled with a mix of pride and anticipation. The air around the battlefield seemed to shift, the earlier tension and fear palpably dissipating as the Saiyan warriors now stood behind Broly. They had been paralyzed by fear at the thought of facing Moro again, but Broly's presence, his calm demeanor amidst such power, reassured them. It was as if his confidence infused them with courage. Broly closed his eyes for a moment, centering himself. His primary goal had been to remain inconspicuous, to keep his energy signature as muted as possible. He was well aware that the mysterious force that had yanked him through time was still out there, lurking, possibly observing. The power needed to manipulate time was immense, and whoever wielded it was not to be underestimated. But the monotony of waiting, the simmering impatience for action, gnawed at him. Broly was a warrior at heart, and the stillness was more taxing than any battle. With a slight smirk, feeling the itch for combat too great to ignore, Broly decided to give Moro a glimpse of what he was truly up against. He would release just a sliver of his power, enough to stir the air, enough to send a clear message. His ki flared subtly, a controlled burst that rippled across the battlefield, a silent testament to his strength. The Saiyans around him felt the surge and looked on in awe, their fears overshadowed by the spectacle of power Broly controlled. Moro, sensing this new energy, turned sharply, his eyes widening slightly as he registered the change in the air. The arrogance that had painted his features began to give way to a hint of caution. He had not expected this. The sudden display of power from Broly was both a surprise and a challenge. Moro had considered himself the apex predator, the top of the universal food chain, but here stood a being whose mere restrained presence suggested depths of strength Moro hadn't anticipated. Broly's lips curled into a slight smile, his eyes gleaming with a warrior's joy. "Come then, Moro, let's see if you can teach me anything," he taunted lightly, his stance relaxed yet unmistakably ready for whatever might come his way. Moro's astonishment was palpable as he witnessed the sheer magnitude of Broly's energy. The ancient sorcerer had encountered many powerful beings in his long dark tenure as the scourge of the cosmos, but never had he sensed such raw, overwhelming power in a single individual. The energy that Broly emanated dwarfed everything else on the planet, a tidal wave of force that could easily wash away all opposition. As he watched Broly's ki surge, unchecked and wild, Moro felt a hunger awaken within him, a desperate need to possess this power, to make it his own. "This is it," Moro muttered under his breath, his eyes fixed on the Saiyan. "This power. I must have it." As Broly's power continued to escalate, the ground beneath them trembled, the city's structures groaned under the strain, and soon, the very planet itself seemed to quake in resonance with his might. Despite this tremendous display, Broly remained in his base form, a fact that surprised even him. His mastery over his ki had reached new heights, allowing him to exert incredible energy without losing control. A light of amusement twinkled in his eyes, and he couldn't help but laugh. Turning briefly to Yamoshi, "You're not a bad teacher after all," he said, his voice echoing with a mix of respect and jest. Unperturbed by the power before him, Moro discarded his robe, signaling his readiness to escalate the confrontation. He knew well that sheer force alone did not guarantee victory. His centuries of combat experience had taught him that much. Moro had faced and defeated foes whose strength surpassed his own through cunning and the strategic use of his magical abilities. "Power is not the only path to victory," he murmured, settling into a fighting stance that belied his calm acceptance of the challenge. Without a moment's hesitation, Moro unleashed his formidable magic, manipulating the very elements around them. Tapping into the life force of the planet itself, a technique he had perfected over eons, he summoned a massive surge of energy from deep within the earth. The ground split, and from it spewed a torrent of what appeared to be molten lava, enveloping Broly in a fiery prison meant to sap his strength and will. The air grew thick with heat, the temperature soaring to such extremes that it began to melt the very soil beneath their feet. Nearby Saiyans recoiled as the heat singed their skin, a painful reminder of the deadly power at Moro's command. The area around them was quickly evacuated, the Saiyans fleeing from the devastating energy unleashed by their foe. Yet, to the shock of everyone present, Moro included, Broly stepped out of the infernal cage unscathed, his expression one of amused disdain for the attempt on his resilience. With a feral grin plastered across his face, Broly moved with astonishing speed, closing the distance between him and Moro in a heartbeat. He grasped Moro by the face, his fingers clenching with enough force to send the sorcerer reeling backward, smashing into the ground with a thunderous impact. Yamoshi, observing the swift and brutal counter, couldn't help but express his admiration. "He is so fast," he commented, awe coloring his tone. The battle was unfolding in ways that even he had not anticipated, each moment showcasing Broly's extraordinary capabilities and hinting at the untapped depths of power the Saiyan warrior still held in reserve. Broly's battle with Moro ascended rapidly as the Saiyan warrior launched his foe into the sky with formidable might. With an explosive burst of speed, Broly rocketed upwards, positioning himself above Moro. His hands glowed ominously with a dense aura of condensed ki, primed for a devastating blow. As he drove his fists downward, aiming directly at Moro hurtling back to the planet, an unexpected twist occurred. Moro, with an eerie calmness, managed to halt Broly's punch mid-flight. A vile smile spread across Moro's face, revealing the sinister nature of his power. As their fists connected, Broly felt a strange sensation, a tugging at his very life essence. Moro, thriving in the clash, began to siphon the tremendous energy Broly wielded. Despite the shock of this revelation, Broly, driven by instinct and battle prowess, amplified his power output. The force of his enhanced punch broke through Moro's defenses, sending the sorcerer crashing back to the ground, his body rebounding off the terrain like a discarded toy. Landing back on the surface, Broly's confusion was palpable. He inspected himself, feeling an unfamiliar drain on his reserves. "What was that?" he muttered, probing the unusual sensation of having his energy sapped. This moment, unsettling in its familiarity, reminded him of past battles where similar energy siphoning tactics were used, though previously those were linked to the manipulation of godly ki, a power Broly did not possess. Moro, undeterred and seemingly unharmed, rose to his feet, brushing off the debris. The lack of any visible damage on him was alarming. Broly's mind raced as he tried to connect the dots, ultimately deciding to push his theories in a more direct confrontation. "Your efforts are futile. You can't hurt me, you're only delaying the inevitable," Moro taunted, his voice echoing menacingly across the battlefield. Without hesitation, Broly surged forward, his speed incomprehensible, a mere blur to the naked eye. He clenched his fist, energy swirling around it, ready to deliver a strike powerful enough to shatter planets. However, as his fist made contact, Moro conjured an energy sphere that enveloped him, absorbing and dissipating much of the attack's force, causing only a slight pushback against the ancient sorcerer. The intensity of the clash had unintended consequences. The planet itself began to fracture, groans of stress emanating from its very core as Moro continued to tap into its life force to fuel his defensive measures. "You can't hurt me without hurting the planet, boy. But be my guest. I can use its energy until it's extinguished." Moro laughed cruelly, his strategy clear as he exploited the planet's energy reserves. "I see," Broly responded, realization dawning on him. The slow drain of his power mirrored the leeching of the planet's vitality. Just like how you drain the planet's life energy, you can also drain people's life energy as well. Moro continued to draw more of the planet's life force, his strength visibly growing as he adapted to Broly's tactics. The sorcerer was no novice to combat. His ability to anticipate and counter Broly's moves was improving by the moment, suggesting that it would only be a matter of time before he could potentially surpass the Saiyan warrior in terms of tactical advantage. Broly stood firm, his muscular frame radiating an intense energy that even the most seasoned fighters would find daunting. "I've encountered many who thought themselves invincible because they could steal the strength of others," he proclaimed, his voice a resonant thunder across the battlefield. "But you, Moro, are merely another lesson waiting to be learned. Watch closely." With those words, Broly's aura flared dramatically, the air around him crackling with raw power. The ground beneath his feet trembled, not from the planet's distress but from the overwhelming force of his energy. Moro's eyes widened in shock, disbelief etched across his face as he realized Broly had been holding back his true capabilities. "Is he capable of transformation?" Moro muttered to himself, unprepared for what was to come. In an explosive display of light and energy, Broly began to transform. His body grew even larger, his hair lengthening and changing color as he ascended to the legendary Super Saiyan 4 form. The Saiyans watching from a distance gasped in awe, having never witnessed such a transformation. It was a form they had only read about in the ancient Namekian Book of Legends, a script held sacred and shrouded in mystery. Yamoshi, observing the transformation with a mix of admiration and concern, couldn't help but shout, "Broly, what are you doing? Are you trying to destroy the planet on purpose?" His voice was tinged with anxiety, aware of the destructive potential of such power. Broly, now fully transformed, ignored Yamoshi's worries. "I know what I'm doing," he responded calmly, his voice steady despite the swirling power that enveloped him. The quaking of the planet had ceased. Broly had achieved perfect control over his energy, a testament to his mastery of the Super Saiyan 4 form. This mastery was not innate. Broly had struggled initially with the transformation, often losing vast amounts of energy that simply dissipated into the atmosphere, unused and wasted. Under Yamoshi's guidance, however, he had learned to harness this power efficiently. Every burst of energy, every transformation was now a controlled, deliberate act. His training had taught him to conserve, to manage his formidable energy so that it replenished his strength rather than depleting it. This newfound skill gave him the ability to sustain even higher levels of power, potentially reaching the mythical state of Dark Super Saiyan 5 at will. "In just a few months, this fool has finally grasped the concept," Yamoshi remarked, a hint of pride in his voice despite his earlier concern. "It's not perfectly controlled yet, but it's undeniable progress. He's one step closer to reaching Super Saiyan 6. "You show off," Yamoshi called out with a mixture of jest and admiration, watching as Broly turned his attention back to Moro, who was even more surprised, asked if this Saiyan was concealing his true strength. Moro's frustration boiled over as he unleashed a surge of magic, attempting to manipulate Broly's massive form and draw him closer. Yet, to his astonishment and mounting anger, Broly remained immovable, an unyielding pillar amidst a storm of arcane energy. "What?" Moro bellowed, disbelief coloring his tone as his magic proved ineffectual, a rare occurrence in his long history of conquest. Driven by desperation and rage, Moro dashed forward, closing the distance between him and Broly with alarming speed. His fists flew in a flurry of punches, each blow a testament to his might, aimed with precision and fueled by fury. The earth beneath them couldn't withstand the onslaught. It cracked and cratered, giving way as Moro's relentless assault deepened the ground beneath Broly's feet. Yet, as the dust settled and Moro's barrage came to a momentary halt, he found, much to his shock, that Broly had not sustained any damage. In fact, the Saiyan seemed almost bored with the display. In an instant that felt like an eternity to Moro, Broly caught his fist with an ease that belied his massive form. With a swift movement, Broly forced Moro down, pressing him towards the cratered earth. "You want my power," Broly stated, his voice calm and menacing. "Well, here it is, take it all. Let's see how much you can handle before you break." His words were not just a challenge, they were a provocation, a dare to push Moro to his limits. With a powerful blow to the stomach, Broly sent Moro hurtling through the air like a discarded rag doll. The sorcerer's body crashed into a nearby mountain, the impact resonating like thunder, a stark testament to Broly's overwhelming strength. "I can't believe it," a Saiyan warrior yelled from a safe distance, his voice a mix of awe and exhilaration. "He is winning. He's defeating Moro." In a fit of desperation, Moro gathered his waning strength and launched a ki blast at Broly. With a nonchalant flick of his wrist, Broly slapped the attack aside, redirecting it effortlessly towards Moro's ship. The ship exploded upon contact, a fiery ball of destruction lighting up the sky. "How is he so powerful?" Moro gasped, his breath ragged as he struggled to comprehend the situation. "I've taken so much of his power, yet it feels as if his reserves are bottomless. I know I'm getting stronger, this is the strongest I've ever been, but somehow, I can't close the gap." "What, you've reached your limit?" Broly taunted, a smirk playing across his lips. His stance was relaxed, almost casual, as if he were merely toying with Moro rather than engaged in a battle for supremacy. Moro's frustration morphed into unbridled rage as he let out a bellowing roar, his energy spiking dangerously high. With renewed ferocity, he charged at Broly, unleashing a torrent of blows that seemed to ripple through the very air. The battlefield became a blur of motion as Moro's fists met Broly's seemingly impenetrable defense. Despite the intensity of the assault, Broly walked through the onslaught, unaffected and visibly unharmed. His superior ki control allowed him to manage his power loss efficiently, losing energy at a far slower rate than Moro might have anticipated. On the other side, Moro's power surged exponentially. With each passing moment, he felt an intoxicating rush of strength coursing through him, elevating his power to levels he perceived as divine. He even entertained the thought of standing toe-to-toe with Beerus, the god of destruction, should their paths ever cross. This newfound might gave him the confidence to finally land a significant blow to Broly's stomach, sending the Saiyan hurtling backward. However, Broly quickly regained his composure and halted his backward momentum, floating effortlessly mid-air before landing gracefully back on the surface. Moro, observing his own hands, felt a surge of triumph as he witnessed the fruits of his relentless assault. The gap between them was closing, or so it seemed. He was tapping into the raw essence of what made Broly's legendary Super Saiyan 4 form so formidable. "Don't disappoint me," Broly called out, his voice calm yet edged with challenge. "You got the power you wanted. I was looking for a training dummy, someone I could test the fruits of my training on." As Broly prepared to charge once more, eager to resume their cataclysmic duel, the unforeseen consequences of Moro's unchecked absorption began to manifest. Moro had indeed become more powerful, but his body was not equipped to handle the overwhelming and raw energy of Broly's Super Saiyan 4 form. His form began to swell unnaturally, his silhouette distorting as his body struggled to contain the immense power. "So, you've reached your limit," Broly remarked, almost pityingly. "Such a shame." With precision and control, Broly launched into another series of attacks, each strike more forceful than the last. With every hit, Moro's body swelled further, a grotesque testament to his inability to handle the Saiyan's power. "You want my power, don't you? So here, take more," Broly yelled, his voice echoing across the battlefield as he delivered blow after blow, pumping even more energy into Moro's already overwhelmed system. Broly then leaped back, observing the effects of his strategy with a cold, calculated gaze. His smile broadened, not out of malice, but satisfaction. His plan had worked perfectly. He had deliberately let Moro believe he was gaining the upper hand, only to overwhelm him with an insurmountable surge of energy. Broly had understood that there was a limit to how much energy Moro could absorb, and he had exploited that flaw masterfully. Moro, overwhelmed and overpowered, struggled to comprehend the dire predicament he found himself in. For the first time in his long and malevolent life, he he faced the boundaries of his own abilities. "What's happening?" he gasped, his voice a mix of confusion and fear. "What have you done to me?" Broly's laughter, deep and resonant, filled the air as he towered over the swollen figure of Moro. "I've spent a lifetime training my body to harness the power of Super Saiyan 4. Broly explained, his tone almost instructive. "But your body, having only just been exposed to such immense power, couldn't possibly regulate it. It would take you centuries to even come close to mastering the energy you've so recklessly absorbed." He looked down at Moro, his expression turning serious. "Your power isn't your own. You steal from others without truly understanding it. That means, while you may gain temporary boosts, you'll never unlock the full potential nor improve upon it. You're just a thief in the realm of power, Moro." As Broly spoke, Moro's body became grotesquely enlarged, swelling like a balloon on the verge of bursting. The energy within him, unstable and uncontrollable, turned him into a literal bomb, ticking down to inevitable detonation. Recognizing the imminent danger, Broly acted swiftly. He grabbed Moro by the harness, launched upwards with incredible speed, and spun around to hurl him far off the planet's surface and deep into space. There, removed from the harm he could cause to the planet and its inhabitants, Moro's body reached its limit and exploded spectacularly, ending his threat once and for all. As Broly powered back down to his base form, the onlookers from a safe distance were left in utter disbelief. The battlefield fell silent, the only sounds the distant echoes of the explosion that marked Moro's demise. King Salad, witnessing the unthinkable, voiced his astonishment. "How can a Saiyan be this powerful? Is he a god? Do we Saiyans truly possess the potential to achieve such incomprehensible strength?" Meanwhile, Yamoshi, who had trained Broly and knew of his capabilities, found himself re-evaluating the very limits of Saiyan potential. "Hey, Broly," he called out, his voice carrying a mix of excitement and curiosity. "Remind me, you said there are other Saiyans from your time who are just as strong as you." He needed to understand if Broly was an anomaly or if such power was indeed something others of their race could aspire to. "Yes, of course," Broly replied, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. "They might even be stronger than me." His gaze then shifted to King Salad, a hint of urgency returning to his tone. "Speaking of that, King Salad, have you discovered a way to bring me back yet?" King Salad, still visibly shaken by the sheer display of power he had witnessed, struggled to regain his composure. Broly's voice snapped him back to the present. "King," Broly called out, drawing the king out of his stunned silence. "I'm unsure. We have to talk to my researchers first." The king responded slowly, his voice tinged with awe and uncertainty. He then suggested they reconvene in the throne room once everyone had sufficiently recovered from the day's tumultuous events. Broly, his stomach still dictating his priorities, flew back to the kitchen to satisfy his lingering hunger. His departure left a palpable sense of inspiration among the gathered Saiyans. They had witnessed a level of strength they had never imagined possible, and it filled them with newfound confidence and determination. Broly's display had unwittingly set a new benchmark for what a Saiyan could achieve, sparking a fierce desire in many to reach and perhaps even surpass his prowess. From that day forward, Broly's influence permeated the Saiyan race, cementing their reputation across the ages as a formidable warrior race. Days passed as the Saiyans began the process of rebuilding, mending the damages wrought by Moro's invasion. As planned, Broly met with King Salad in the throne room, where Yamoshi, a researcher, an elder who had safeguarded the Namekian Book of Legends, and the king himself were waiting. The discussion, however, did not yield the answers Broly had hoped for. The researcher explained their current understanding, stating bluntly, "There is no known method of time travel to the future, at least not yet. The only lead we have comes from what might be considered a fairy tale." The elder then spoke of the Namekian Book of Legends, which mentioned the use of Dragon Balls, mystical orbs that, when gathered, could summon a dragon capable of granting any wish. The king scoffed at the notion, disbelief clear in his voice. "A dragon that can grant any wish? Come on, that sounds like a lie." Broly, listening intently, suddenly slapped his forehead in realization. "How stupid can I be?" he muttered to himself. He recalled another use of the Dragon Balls from his own time when they had asked Shenron to aid in fusing Piccolo. After their use, the Dragon Balls turned to stone and would not be active again for another 1,000 years. It hadn't occurred to him that, in this past timeline, the Dragon Balls might still be usable. "Yes, I can confirm that what the elders are saying is true," Broly affirmed, his voice growing steadier with his newfound realization. "The Dragon Balls do exist. We have them in other times." A new thought dawned on him, a potential solution to a problem that had weighed heavily on his heart. "Yes, maybe I can wish Gohan back to life." As time itself seemed to fold, the scene transitioned from a distant memory to the stark, unsettling reality of the future, a future marked by conflict and chaos. The setting was the worn-torn planet of Lord Belmod, the formidable god of destruction of Universe 11. The air was thick with the aftermath of battle, each breath a reminder of the desperate struggle for survival. Amidst the shattered remnants of what once was, Toppo, once a towering figure of justice and power, now knelt defeated and drained on the cold, hard ground. His frame, usually so full of vigor and resolve, was slumped, his shoulders bowed under the weight of exhaustion. The mighty hero struggled to maintain his destruction form, his energy reserves dangerously depleted, his aura flickering weakly around him. Not far from him, Jiren, the mortal whose power was rumored to surpass even that of a god of destruction, stood with heavy breaths clouding in the chilly air. Despite his exceptional training under the watchful eye of his universe's angel, Margarita, and having mastered the elusive technique of Ultra Instinct, Jiren found himself pushed to his limits. The foe they faced, the demon god Azazel, was a force beyond their reckoning, a terror that seemed untouchable by mortal hands. Inside his grand palace, Lord Belmod was a visage of defeat and weariness. Recent battles had left him bruised and battered, his once immaculate garb torn and stained with the marks of conflict. His injuries, though severe, had not yet dulled the fiery spirit that burned within him. Sensing that his most loyal and valiant warriors were teetering on the brink of annihilation, Belmod, driven by a mix of duty and desperation, resolved to join the fray. If death was to be his fate, he preferred it to be alongside those who had fought valiantly under his command. As he gathered his strength to step out from the sanctuary of his palace, a chilling sound halted him in his tracks. It was a shrill, piercing alarm, one that he had not heard for nearly a billion years. An alarm that signaled a threat not just to a world, or even a galaxy, but to the entire multiverse. The God Pod, a device given to him and all other gods of destruction by Zeno himself, was designed to warn of cataclysmic dangers that could unravel the very fabric of reality. Lord Belmod's heart sank, his eyes widening with a mix of fear and realization. The magnitude of the threat they faced was now undeniable. If the God Pod had sounded its alarm, then the turmoil wrought by Azazel might be far more catastrophic than they had imagined. It was said that if these pods were to ever sound an alarm, it is because the entire multiverse was in danger. The resonant alarm of the God Pod sent a surge of panic through Lord Belmod's veins, his heart sinking as the gravity of the situation dawned upon him. Standing amidst the ruins of his once regal palace, he muttered to himself, his voice barely above a whisper, grappling with the scale of the threat. What could this mean? He pondered, his thoughts swirling in turmoil. Could this being, the one both Jiren and Toppo fight, be a multiverse's threat, or is it because of the Saiyan? Belmod knew the criteria all too well. Only those at the level of the Grand Priest, or greater, could be deemed a multiversal threat. He spoke with a mix of disbelief and resignation. Surely this isn't the case. His mind raced. The Saiyans have indeed grown powerful, surpassing even gods of destruction and some angels. But to rival the Grand Priest, that cannot be. His thoughts streamed like codes through a computer program, trying to decode the unfolding chaos. Could it be that this being, the one outside, is the universal threat? He questioned as he steadied himself to leave the safety of his palace once more. But just as he was about to step through the grand exit, a chilling voice echoed, seemingly from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was his oracle fish, shouting as if possessed, repeating a cryptic prophecy. All shall converge into one and one shall reign supreme. The words reverberated through the desolate halls, each repetition sinking deeper into Belmod's weary soul. What could this possibly mean? Belmod, feeling far too weak to engage in battle, finally stepped outside, the weight of his decisions bearing down on him. With a voice laden with regret, he confessed to himself, it was a mistake to have started this war. The realization dawned on him that perhaps they, the gods of destruction, were merely pawns in a much larger game orchestrated by Zeno himself, a game whose scope and consequences they had not fully understood until now. As he emerged into the harsh light of the battle-scarred world, the sight that greeted him was one of desperation and defiance. Both Jiren and Toppo were engaged in a fierce struggle, their bodies pushed to the brink as they contended with a massive sphere of destructive energy unleashed by Azazel. The demon god's power was immense, threatening to overwhelm them as they stood their ground in their most formidable forms. Higher, Jiren yelled, his voice echoing across the battlefield, a beacon of strength in the face of overwhelming odds. Raise your energy higher, he urged Toppo, the strain evident in his voice but his resolve unbreakable. We must not die. We must not allow this monster to reach Lord Belmod. With a Herculean effort that seemed to defy the very limits of their beings, Jiren and Toppo unleashed all the energy they could muster. The ground beneath them cracked and groaned, a stark testament to the sheer force they were exerting. In a display of cosmic upheaval, Belmod's planet trembled violently, briefly shifting off its axis before settling back into place. The air was filled with their combined shouts, a resonant declaration of their refusal to yield. As their energies collided with Azazel's formidable blast, the demon god watched in disbelief as his attack was slowly, but surely, repelled. The sight of these mortals, standing defiant against his overwhelming power, brought a hint of amusement to his eyes. "What's this?" he exclaimed, genuinely intrigued. "These mortals aren't half bad. They are definitely the strongest I've encountered in a while, aside from Lord Zalama. I can't believe they are actually pushing me back. Sure, I'm barely trying, but for beings of their level, this is quite impressive." His amusement quickly waned as his patience thinned. "The fun is over," Azazel declared, his voice booming across the battlefield. "But it's time I end it. I have a schedule to follow. Can't waste any more time on small fries like you two." With a sinister smile, he increased his power by 10%, now exerting 30% of his full capacity. The power of his blast intensified dramatically, the dark energy within swelling with terrifying force. Just as the enhanced blast was about to overwhelm Jiren and Toppo, a new force intervened. Lord Belmod, summoning every ounce of his remaining strength, unleashed a Hakai blast of his own. His attack collided with Azazel's, diverting it off its deadly course. The resulting explosion was colossal, sending shockwaves that rippled far beyond the planet's atmosphere, a vivid display of divine might. Azazel, laying eyes on Lord Belmod for the first time, confirmed his earlier suspicions. Lord Beerus wasn't a demon, just as his comrade Abaddon had suggested. However, he was perplexed by Belmod's ability to wield destruction energy. "Although it isn't pure destruction energy like that of a true demon, it still puzzles me," Azazel thought, intrigued by how a non-demon could manipulate such potent forces. "So you finally come out," Azazel said, fixing his menacing gaze on Lord Belmod, who now stood defiantly despite his injuries. "Lord Belmod, why have you come out?" Toppo inquired, concern evident in his voice. He knew all too well how badly Belmod was hurt, and any further exertion could cause serious internal damage. "I will not hide away like a coward," Belmod declared with a fierce resolve. "I am a god, the god of destruction of Universe 11, he proclaimed, assuming a battle pose that spoke volumes of his readiness to fight, regardless of his condition. Sensing the gravity of the moment, both Jiren and Toppo instinctively jumped back to flank their lord. Their movements were swift and determined, positioning themselves to support Belmod, ready to back him up in the impending showdown. Azazel's expression twisted into a sinister grin as he prepared to unleash his unique combat style on the defenders of Universe 11. Unlike most fighters who relied on a blend of physical combat and ki manipulation, Azazel's strength lay in his mastery of magic, the arcane art of ki manipulation that allowed him to wield his enormous energy reserves with devastating effect. With a deceptive casualness, he took a single step forward. In the blink of an eye, however, the scene shifted dramatically. He wasn't just moving, he was bending the very fabric of space. By the time the onlookers processed his movement, he was already behind them, his presence ghostly and unnervingly silent. The defenders barely had time to register his position when he reached out and tapped Toppo on the shoulder. The touch, light yet imbued with dark power, sent Toppo hurtling uncontrollably forward. Before Toppo could regain his bearings, a dark portal snapped open in the air before him. With no time to react, he was sucked into the abyssal void, the portal sealing shut with a finality that echoed ominously through the battlefield. This was Azazel's pocket demon dimension, a fearsome ability granted by Xeno to the demon race, a realm where only demons, and Xeno himself, could manipulate space and captivity. Time was of the essence for Azazel, who was evidently growing impatient with the delays. He was due to return to Lord Zarama, and every second counted. As he turned his focus back to Belmod, Jiren and the injured god made a tactical decision to split up, hoping to outmaneuver their foe with swift movements. Azazel, however, anticipated this. His eyes narrowed as he calculated Belmod's likely path, and, with precision born of countless battles, he unleashed a potent ki blast towards the spot where he predicted Belmod would land. The prediction was accurate. Belmod, already severely weakened and slowed by his injuries, couldn't avoid the incoming attack. The blast struck him squarely, the impact resonating with a thunderous explosion that shook the very air. The force of the explosion was too much for the already battered god of destruction. As the smoke cleared, Belmod lay on the ground, his body scorched and smoldering, blood trickling from his mouth, a stark testament to the severity of his injuries from the previous battles with the Saiyans. Though the blast was intended to incapacitate rather than kill, the damage was severe. As Belmod lay vulnerable, another portal opened beneath him, mirroring the one that had ensnared Toppo. With no strength left to resist, Belmod was swallowed by the dark void, the portal snapping shut as quickly as it had appeared, leaving no trace of the fallen god. Azazel stood amidst the chaos he had wrought, a grim reminder of his power, Despite the might of Universe 11's greatest warriors, they had failed to withstand even 10 minutes against him. This swift defeat of some of the most powerful beings in existence only highlighted the terrifying strength of Azazel, a demon god whose powers were perhaps unmatched. "What's happened?" Jiren gasped, his voice a mix of shock and rage as he struggled to comprehend the swift and devastating events that had just unfolded before him. "What have you done? Where have you taken them?" he demanded, his voice echoing with fury as he tapped into a deeper, more potent reservoir of power than he had ever accessed before. His energy expanded dramatically, swirling around him like a vibrant galaxy, its brilliant luminescence casting light across the expanse of space. Azazel watched, his interest piqued by this sudden surge of strength. "What's this?" he mused aloud, a smirk playing on his lips. "It seems you found new strength. Impressive. But it simply is not enough. I will kill you as I have no need for you. You don't possess destruction keys, so you'll have to die." With no further words, the two adversaries charged at each other, their movements a blur of speed and ferocity. Azazel reached Jiren first, his demonic speed giving him the upper hand. He launched a planet-shattering blow, a punch that carried the weight of a meteor strike. Jiren, now empowered and prepared, managed to block the attack. Steam hissed off his hands as the force of Azazel's blow met the unyielding wall of his defense. However, the sheer power behind the attack sent Jiren reeling backward, showcasing that seeing the attack was one thing but withstanding it was an entirely different challenge. Regaining his balance mid-flight, Jiren barely had a moment to recover before Azazel unleashed another onslaught. Using his uncanny predictive abilities, almost akin to a superior form of observation haki, Azazel rained down a barrage of ki blasts from above, perfectly targeting the area where Jiren would land. Caught off guard while still dealing with the aftermath of the first massive strike, Jiren was hit squarely by the barrage. The impacts were catastrophic, driving him down to the planet's surface. The force of the attack was so immense that it penetrated the crust, reaching the core and causing a cataclysmic reaction. Within moments, the planet erupted in a massive explosion, its destruction complete and absolute. As the planet disintegrated, Azazel, unaffected by the vacuum of space, teleported away, his mission in Universe 11 accomplished. He reappeared in the Null Realm, the specific location where Lord Zarama awaited. His ability to teleport to any previously visited location made his movements swift and unpredictable. Upon arrival, Azazel found Zarama standing alone, gazing contemplatively into the cosmic expanse, his posture calm and composed with his arms folded. The scene was strangely serene, a stark contrast to the chaos and destruction that had just ensued. Azazel stepped into the stillness of the Null Realm, his arrival cutting through the quiet like a sharp blade. Before him stood Zarama, his expression unreadable yet tinged with a slight smile as he acknowledged Azazel's presence. "Azazel, you've arrived. I take it you found what you were looking for." Zarama greeted him, his tone light yet carrying an undercurrent of anticipation. "Yes, my lord. But what happened? Have you defeated the Saiyan already, and where is their body?" Azazel responded, his surprise evident. He had known of Zarama's formidable strength, yet the quick resolution seemed almost too swift, especially given the Saiyan's significant power, comparable to that of Abaddon, who was considered the weakest of the primordial demon gods. "No," Zarama replied, his voice carrying a hint of irritation. "The battle was interrupted by that damn priest. He had taken them before I could reclaim my power from those Saiyans." Azazel's brow furrowed at the mention of the interruption. "What of Abaddon and Mephistopheles? You're the only one who has arrived back so far. I can't communicate with them as I don't have that shared telepathy you demons possess." Zarama glanced towards the horizon, his gaze distant. "The only one I've spoken to was Abaddon, who was engaged in combat with another fallen demon. You know, the ones with the falling destruction energy we discussed earlier." His tone suggested a mix of concern and frustration, reflecting the complexities of their situation. The two beings stood in the desolate landscape of the Null Realm, their figures solitary against the vast nothingness. They conversed quietly as they awaited the arrival of the rest of their allies. The scene switches back to Universe 18, a divine universe nestled within Zeno's pocket dimension. Here lies the abode of the 5 strongest beings. However, upon the Omni King's arrival, only one of these beings was present. This being was Amuku, who had transported himself from outside Vegeta's mind, and was now waiting patiently for the Omni King, having sensed the exact moment the universe was breached. As soon as the Grand Priest and the Omni King landed, Amuku hurried to greet them. Given that he and the Grand Priest could never see eye to eye, Amuku only acknowledged Zeno, completely ignoring the Daishinkan. "Welcome, my lord. I've kept the sane laying down in the temporal room. Please follow me," he said with a respectful bow. Zeno nodded and followed Amuku, his mind preoccupied with thoughts of the aquafoam. After extracting both halves of the aquafoam from each sane, He pondered whether he would be able to merge them back into their original state, or would they continue to reject each other. This question puzzled him, especially after so many miscalculations in the past. If this method failed, he wondered if killing the Saiyans would cause the aquafoam to seek a new host outside their bodies, given that it needed a living being to regulate it. The aquafoam couldn't remain inside a lifeless being, it needed a living host. Initially, this task fell to the Fountain of Creation, then to Zarama, but since Zarama wasn't pure of heart, he couldn't access the aquafoam's full untapped power. Now, it had moved on to the Saiyans. Zeno knew that if the Saiyans weren't alive, the aquafoam would have to leave their bodies and search for a new host. This would give him a second chance to merge both halves by allowing it to enter his own body, its rightful home, considering he was the one who placed it in the Fountain of Creation in the first place. Zeno's intellect was growing with every failure. The more he stumbled, the more he learned. He realized, wasn't his teacher, failure was. Each setback brought him closer to true omniscience. "We're here, my lord," replied Zarama as he gazed at the Saiyans, but confusion clouded his mind. To his surprise, the Saiyans, who had been laid out on the ground, were now standing, though still unconscious. "What?" Amuku exclaimed, struggling to understand what he was seeing. This shouldn't be possible. Not unless the Saiyans were beginning to regain consciousness. Zeno and the Grand Priest, however, were unaware of the significance of this change. They assumed the Saiyans had always been like that. "Is something the matter, Amuku?" the Daishinkan asked, a hint of suspicion in his voice. "Well, you see, no," Amuku stammered, realizing this might be a good thing. If the Saiyans' bodies were reacting to subtle instructions from their brains, it meant they were regaining some control. This could make it easier to guide their souls back to their bodies. However, he also knew they needed to extract the aquafoam from within their bodies first. If the Saiyans were starting to wake up, it meant they were beginning to regain control over the aquafoam. If they managed to regulate it as before, the overflow of aquafoam he had seen bursting out inside the Saiyans' psyche earlier would disappear. "My lord, the Saiyan minds are prepared. Would you like to enter now?" Amuku asked. "What's the rush?" the Grand Priest replied, sensing that Amuku was hiding something. These two were always at odds, and they had developed a knack for knowing when the other was concealing something, even if it was just a feeling. But then Zeno replied, "The Saiyans are starting to wake up, aren't they, Amuku?" Zeno could tell that something had changed among the Saiyans. He might not be completely omniscient yet, but he was still omnipotent. He could sense any change in power within his domain, meaning all power inside the multiverse was visible to his all-seeing eyes. When the Grand Priest first brought the Saiyans to him, he immediately knew that the aquafoam was overpowering them. The Saiyans' stamina had plummeted to dangerous levels, dropping below what was needed to regulate the aquafoam. Since the aquafoam needed constant regulation, the struggle caused the Saiyans to fall into a coma-like state. It was a dire choice: use their last remaining energy to maintain the aquafoam or face death. For mortals and most gods who tried to use the aquafoam, failing to keep it purified and regulated meant it would drain every single ounce of their energy, ultimately killing them. It wasn't that the Saiyans were starting to awaken, it was the aquafoam reacting to the presence of the Omni King. This realization caused Zeno's eyes to glow a bright white light as he levitated towards the Saiyans. Starting with Vegeta, he placed his finger in the middle of Vegeta's chest, where the aquafoam was concentrated. The aquafoam was located at the center of the body, where it could send out or absorb most of the body's energy. Suddenly, Zeno found himself in a place surrounded by darkness. All around him, he could hear a low chant.
"All shall converge into one and one shall reign supreme."
The chant repeated over and over again. Sensing something was wrong, the Grand Priest appeared in front of Vegeta in the blink of an eye, his hands folded behind him. He then flicked Vegeta on the forehead, sending the sand flying backwards. This broke the connection, and the glow left Zeno's eyes, along with the chanting voice. As Vegeta was about to collide with the wall, he subconsciously stopped himself mid-air, his eyes closed as he remained unconscious. This surprised the Grand Priest. Even though that was a small burst of power, it was still impressive from a god's perspective. A mortal like Vegeta should not have managed that, especially while still unconscious. A smile began to form on the Daishinkan's face. Was it just instinct, he wondered. With his hand now by his side, he charged at Vegeta, but was instantly stopped by Zeno, who shouted, "Stand down!" Instantly, the Grand Priest halted in his tracks. "Amuku, it's time. Take me inside the Saiyans' mind. There is something I want to confirm." The Omni King had questions. New things kept happening without his knowledge. Events, different futures, all escaping his all-seeing eyes. Furthermore, the voice in the vision seemed very familiar. To him, it sounded eerily close to the voice of his father. But that seemed absurd to him. He hadn't communicated with his father for over a millennium. Why would he intervene now? Was this message a clue? These thoughts flooded his mind. One thing was for certain. The closer he got to the aquafoam, the more answers were revealed. Without hesitation, Amuku initiated the transfer by placing his finger on Vegeta's forehead once more. However, this time he met resistance. Just like before, he tried to break through by overpowering him, but this time it didn't work. Like glass, his concentration shattered. "Impossible," he shouted. "How could he have broken my control? Who is this San?" Increasing his power even more, Amuku raised his energy output to 15%. This was enough force to shatter the minds of most beings, yet to his complete and utter disbelief, he still couldn't enter. From here on, if he decided to increase his power even more, it would start affecting himself. Although his technique was powerful, even it had limits. He just never knew where it maxed out, as no being had ever withstood such an enormous amount of angelic energy before without breaking. Suddenly, Vegeta's heart began to pump harder, his stamina and energy starting to come back. But how? What was causing this? You see, Amuku had made a mistake without even knowing it. After training on Yardrat, Vegeta achieved a new technique called Force Spirit Fission. The moment Amuku touched Vegeta, Vegeta subconsciously started to absorb Amuku's energy. This was enough to revitalize his body, not to full health, but to a whopping 5%. This was just enough to regain control of the aquafoam, which was slowly killing him. The second mistake was made by Zeno, who touched him once more. Again, Vegeta's technique went into motion, absorbing a large amount of energy from Zeno, replenishing his body and stamina back up to an astounding 20% of his max health. That was why the Grand Priest attacked him earlier. He sensed something was wrong. Suddenly, Vegeta's eyes snapped open. A radiant, almost radioactive aura burst forth, filling the room with blinding light. This was the buildup of energy inside his psyche. Amuku, taken aback, hastily erected a protective barrier around himself, allowing him to pass through the gamma burst of radiant energy waves. Zeno and the Grand Priest remained unmoved. The Daishinkan, with a serious look on his face, effortlessly absorbed the residual energy with a mere flick of his fingertips, before teleporting the energy outside of the palace, allowing it to explode far off in the galaxy. The multiverse shook under the pressure. This was not normal energy. It was the excess aquafoam Vegeta released from his body, as maintaining so much would kill him. Instantly, Vegeta now fully awakened. His gaze swept across the room, landing first on Grand Zeno and then on the Grand Priest. Amidst the powerful figures, he spotted Amuku, an unknown yet clearly powerful entity radiating strength beyond that of the angels. His heart sank as the reality of his situation dawned on him. He was surrounded. Before him stood three beings vastly more powerful than he was. Even at full strength, he doubted he could take them on. Beside him, Vegeta saw Goku, still lost in the depths of unconsciousness. The last memory that clawed its way through Vegeta's mind was their battle with Zarama, the first mortal and the being who killed Gohan. As the reality settled in, a pang of dread gripped him. Broly, where is he? I can't sense him or Gohan. Desperation set in. Instinctively, Vegeta decided to use something he had sworn never to use again. Instant transmission. He teleported to Goku, placing one hand on his shoulder and trying to teleport away. However, there was a significant problem with this approach. He needed to focus on sensing the energy of someone to teleport to their location. Now, he couldn't sense the energy of anyone. To him, everyone on Earth didn't exist. In fact, he couldn't even locate Earth. Vegeta started to question everything. Where were they? He felt as if their luck had run out. Kakarot, wake up, you fool, he shouted, transferring 10% of his energy to Goku in hopes of waking him up. But things didn't go as planned. Goku remained unconscious. It seems you have managed to regain consciousness, said the Grand Priest, his gaze now fixed on Vegeta. Permission to subdue him, my lord? Asked the Grand Priest. However, the Omni King said something that shocked both Amuku and the Grand Priest. Even Vegeta was surprised. I'll handle this. I've gotten quite bored sitting down. Furthermore, this is my trial. It's time I take some action. These two have caused me quite a lot of trouble lately. They have managed to escape my all-seeing eyes. It's time I correct those predictions. Vegeta immediately went on the defensive, powering up to Super Saiyan Blue evolution, the furthest he could reach given his current stamina level. The situation felt hopeless to Vegeta. He knew he couldn't win. His death was guaranteed. But he was a warrior, and he would rather go down fighting. He muttered to himself, closing his eyes with a smile on his face. My darling Bulma, my baby girl Bulla, I'm sorry you have to grow up without me. Kakarot, Broly, Gohan, we were out of our minds going up against the gods of this world. I fought. I'll see you again, either in this world or even after death. Instantly, Vegeta's energy shot upward, rising higher and higher before he took his stand in a fighting position. In a flash, Zeno teleported, appearing instantly in front of Vegeta with blinding speed. Vegeta didn't even have time to blink. Less than a millisecond later, Zeno was there. Shocked, his reflexes allowed him to throw a punch at Zeno, but it was stopped by Infinity. This technique allowed Zeno to manipulate and distort space at will. Coating his entire body with Infinity meant nothing could reach him once he activated this technique. "What?" yelled Vegeta as his fist stopped mid-air, inches away from Zeno's body. Vegeta jumped back, trying to calm his mind and analyze the situation. Was that a barrier? He wondered aloud, but then dismissed the idea. When his fist collided, he didn't feel any contact. It felt as if his fist was stuck mid-air. Testing this, he charged at Zeno, unleashing a rapid onslaught of blows. His fists moved at speeds beyond lightning, but upon contact with Zeno's Infinity, shockwaves of energy radiated off as Vegeta kept up his fury. "Faster, faster," he yelled, as time seemed to open up. Realizing that physical hits caused no damage, he unleashed a massive final flash. However, upon contact, it split in two. The full force diverted to each side. Instantly, Vegeta dropped to his base form as the attack took almost all of his energy, but he wasn't surprised to see Zeno looking down at him, undamaged, with a smile on his face. "Damn it," yelled Vegeta. "If only I was—" But before he could finish, Zeno completed his sentence for him. "At full power. Is that what you were going to say?" replied Zeno, his tone calm and knowing. "If only I had fully recovered my energy, I might have won," Zeno mocked. He was confident. As to him, his power was absolute. No greater power existed beyond his own. Then he spoke again. "Even if you had regained all your strength, you still wouldn't be a challenge for me. In fact, let's test this, shall we?" Without saying another word, the Grand Priest used his angel staff to restore Vegeta back to full health. This stunned Vegeta. He couldn't believe it. However, it also made him angry. He knew this was just a game to them. They were mocking him and his pride as a Saiyan. The ultimate warrior race could not stand for this disrespect. Vegeta felt the surge of energy flood his body, his muscles bulging with newfound power. His aura flared brightly, more intense than ever before. The room shook with the force of his energy. The entire crumbled as his energy shot higher and higher. Vegeta's mind was clear. He knew he was being toyed with, but his Saiyan pride pushed him to fight with everything he had, even if it was a losing battle. With a fierce roar, Vegeta powered up, skipping all his previous form all the way up to mastered Ultra Ego, his eyes burning with raw destruction power and determination. "You think you can mock me and get away with it? I'll show you the true power of a Saiyan," he shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. Zeno stood still, his expression unchanged, as now he felt as if he was the one now being mocked. The Grand Priest watched closely. Amuku, intrigued, was also watching, his arm folded as he steered down true destruction energy. "How dare you? I gave you the chance to go all out, yet you're still holding back," said Zeno. His voice, usually playful and childlike, now carried a heavy menace. "Listen to me, Saiyan. If you don't go all out, mark my words, in the next 10 seconds, you will die." Zeno's seriousness was palpable. His eyes, usually so innocent, now burned with intensity. The atmosphere around him felt like it was melting into lava, steam radiating from his aura. Even for someone as powerful as Vegeta, this was overwhelming. He had trained under intense pressure and heat countless times, but this was different. It was like nothing he had ever faced before. "You think I would be so foolish to hold back?" Vegeta shot back, his voice defiant but tinged with an underlying tension. "I am going all out. This is me, Prince Vegeta, at my best. For some reason, I'm unable to use my Omni form. It's this energy inside me. It's affecting my ability to transform into my Omni state." He paused, taking a deep breath. "So for now, this is my best." But Vegeta was lying through his teeth. The aquafoam wasn't affecting him at all. How could it? He had purified it, mastered it. The aquafoam had recognized him as its master. The truth was that the Omni form burned a lot of stamina and energy, and he couldn't afford to waste any of it. This was a losing battle, and he knew it. There was no way he could take on Zeno by himself, at least not yet. He glanced around, remembering the team he once had: Broly, Gohan, and Kakarot. But now, that team was in shambles. Gohan was dead, Goku was unconscious, and Broly's energy had vanished from the universe. His first instinct was to find a way to escape with Kakarot, to get them both to safety. But that hope was dashed the moment he tried to use instant transmission to teleport to Earth. He couldn't sense it. It felt as if the Earth was gone. Or maybe it was him who was simply too far away, unable to sense the Earth or anyone on it. He knew the Earth wasn't destroyed. Even if it was, he would still be able to locate its remnants. So, the thought never crossed his mind. Instead, he decided to focus on the immediate danger he was in. The reason why Vegeta lied to Zeno about not being able to transform into his Omni form was strategic. He didn't want to risk burning out, not before seeing what Zeno was truly capable of. Vegeta needed to understand Zeno's abilities, his techniques, and his weaknesses to devise an escape plan. He strongly believed that was his only option, so he decided that his Hakaishin form was perfect for this. He needed a drawn-out battle to learn all he could about Zeno. Of course, he had one more level above his Hakaishin form, which was Ultra Ego 3. But just like the Omni form, Ultra Ego 3 burned a considerable amount of stamina, although less than the Omni form. It was still energy he couldn't afford to waste. Zeno, usually known for his calm demeanor, showed a rare sign of anger before calming himself down. But in that brief moment, the small planet that Amuko's palace was on split in two, from the middle downward. This happened in less than a split second. There was no time for Vegeta to react. Not even the planet itself knew it was cut until a minute later. Instantly, as time caught up with the speed at which Zeno moved, the two halves of the planet were being pulled apart by the natural orbit that held the planet in place on its axis within space. What? When did he? Vegeta was too stunned to even finish his thoughts. He stared in disbelief at the two halves of the planet, his mind racing. How could Zeno possess such immense power? Zeno had gotten angry for a moment as yet again, mortals had tried to deceive him. Zeno had a vast array of abilities that he was born with. In fact, all abilities that exist in the multiverse are sub-branches of his main powers. Some have evolved into unique forms, but fundamentally, they all trace back to Zeno. Using his all-seeing eye, Zeno was able to detect that Vegeta was being untruthful. It didn't matter if Vegeta was controlling his ki, lowering it to where it couldn't be detected. Zeno's all-seeing eye could see everything. This ability allowed Zeno to see anything and everything happening in the multiverse, providing him with complete awareness of all events. It even let him see all energy points in any being's body. When looking at Vegeta, he saw that Vegeta had intentionally blocked one point, obstructing the flow of ki throughout his body. He knew this was only done to conceal or control ki at a fixed level. "You're lying," said Zeno as he gazed at Vegeta. "It seems that you mortals have forgotten who I am and what I am capable of. I am the king of all. The entire multiverse and every life inside it was created for me to rule over. I see all that happens, and all that will happen." Vegeta was shocked. But how? He muttered to himself. Did he read my mind? No. If there's one thing I'm sure of, it's that Zeno lacks the ability to read minds. If he did, we would all be dead already. It's something else. As Vegeta's mind wandered, he could only come to one conclusion. Zeno can see the future. This was the only thing that made sense to him. He remembered something the Grand Priest said after the Tournament of Power. Somehow, they knew the outcome of the tournament and what wish would be made. This was what Vegeta believed, not knowing that there was another reason Zeno found out he was trying to deceive him. Zeno's eyes narrowed, the atmosphere growing heavier with each passing second. You mortals, always thinking that resorting to telling lies is always the way to solve things, but my all-seeing eye sees through all tricks. Forget it, said Zeno, his voice calm yet commanding. When you finish scheming, come at me in any way you like. He then declared loudly, one way or another, you will submit to me. Wasting no more time on words, Vegeta stood firm in his battle stance. The aura of a god of destruction radiated off him like a deadly poison, ready to kill anything it touched. He was prepared to attack but knew he couldn't charge in recklessly as before. He sensed something was shielding the Omni King, something beyond normal comprehension. Physical attacks seemed ineffective, but ki attacks could break through. He remembered when he unleashed his final flash earlier. It didn't hit a surface like his fists did. In fact, it made contact, but Zeno had split his blast in half, not with his limitless ability, but through sheer power. Vegeta wondered if his theory still held true now that he had even greater power than his blue evolution form. Suddenly, he spoke to himself. There's no need to wonder. There's only one way to find out. If it's death, then so be it. In an instant, with speed faster than a bolt of lightning, Hakaishin Vegeta charged at Zeno. In mere seconds, he closed the gap, ready to throw a mighty punch. This wasn't any ordinary punch. No, this time he had coated his fist with his destructive energy. His fist burst into purple flames and instantly made contact with Zeno. But once again, it couldn't bypass Zeno's infinity. However, Vegeta wasn't done yet. His Zenkai boost was still in effect. Earlier, when the Grand Priest healed him, he gained even greater strength, surpassing the power of the 12 known gods of destruction. Now, instead of just his fist, his entire body burst into purple flames. The energy dripped off him with heat even greater than lava. The punch had an effect. Vegeta managed to send Zeno soaring upward into the sky. Though it didn't break the ball of infinity around him, it still lifted him off the ground. Seizing the moment, Vegeta used instant transmission to teleport to 6 different locations around Xeno, leaving behind clones of himself that surrounded the Omni King. This was a technique Vegeta had mastered under spirit control, taught to him by the Elder on planet Yardrat during his time in the Hyperbolic time chamber. He had learned to create multiple copies of himself, each capable of fighting independently, making it nearly impossible for opponents to discern the real Vegeta from his duplicates. In unison, the 6 clones used another advanced technique derived from spirit control: gigantification. This technique allowed Vegeta to increase his physical size, enhancing his strength and durability, and letting him grow to giant proportions during combat. Normally, when Vegeta cloned himself, his energy would be equally divided among all the clones. However, this was all part of Vegeta's plan. Earlier, when Vegeta punched Xeno's Infinity Barrier, he used another spirit control ability called Forced Spirit Fission. This allowed him to seal Xeno's energy and then transfer it to his clones. Now, all 6 clones were as strong as Vegeta when he was one being, ensuring he hadn't lost any power at all. The clones expanded, their bodies growing to the size and frame of true giants. Then it happened. All 6 clones prepared to fire special blast techniques. Clone 1 unleashed one of Vegeta's original attacks, Energy Rings. This technique created energy rings that wrapped around Xeno's Infinity Barrier, tightening with more power as Xeno tried to resist. Clone 2 unleashed another classic Vegeta technique, the Atomic Blast. This was a barrage of consecutive, rapid energy blasts, each coated in Hakeishin energy. The attack collided with Xeno's Infinity like a streak of lightning, flashing brightly. However, Xeno's limitless aura did not break. Vegeta was not done yet. He knew he needed to break through Xeno's Infinity if he wanted to have any chance. Clone 3 unleashed another of Vegeta's powerful techniques, the Big Bang Attack. A massive energy sphere fired from one hand. This, combined with the other 3 attacks, began to make a difference. While all 3 clones kept up their attacks, the infinity surrounding Xeno started to shrink, albeit slightly. But this was all the confirmation Vegeta needed to know he was on to something. Clone 4 fired Vegeta's final flash, and Clone 5 followed with Vegeta's Gallic Gun. The combined might of these attacks caused Xeno to take notice. He was in the midst of Vegeta's all-out assault, and he could sense that his Infinity Barrier was starting to breach. Xeno's ability, called Limitless, created an infinite space between the user and anything approaching, effectively preventing any physical contact. When something tried to touch Xeno, it would get infinitely slowed down as it approached, never actually reaching him. However, all 5 full-power mastered Ultra Ego clones were breaching infinity. "How is this possible?" said the Grand Priest as both he and Amuko watched the fight. "How can a mortal reach this level of strength, and all on his own? This Vegeta is powerful." A rare smile broke out on the Grand Priest's face. "He's actually doing very well." Xeno noticed the attacks closing the gap on infinity, something that should have been impossible. "Impressive, young warrior," he yelled, as Clone 6 joined the assault along with his counterparts. Clone 6 unleashed a massive Gamma Burst flash. Now, all 6 attacks from all 6 mastered Ultra Ego clones collided with Xeno's Infinity from all directions. The collision was massive, and the planet could not handle it. The radiation from the Hakeishin energy had reached the planet's core, triggering its destruction. All life, along with everything else, was being permanently erased from existence. The planet was set to explode in 3 minutes. Then, as if the clones' attacks weren't enough, the original, the main body of Ultra Ego Vegeta, dropped from the heavens. He landed on top of the ball of infinity that surrounded Xeno, gripping it with both hands. He began to stretch it, trying to tear a hole in it. Xeno, looking up, smiled. He didn't understand what Vegeta was doing. To him, it didn't matter what technique Vegeta used or what plan he tried, it would never reach him. But then, Vegeta did something that would forever go down in history. Simultaneously, all 6 Master Ultra Ego Vegeta clones, along with the original Vegeta, transformed into the Omni form for a brief moment. Their attack power increased tenfold. The surge in power was immense and unprecedented. Now, there were 6 omnipotent beings, along with the original Omni Vegeta, in existence. This was a one-time feat, made possible by the power Vegeta had taken from Xeno. Suddenly, with the increase in raw power, the destructive energy began to breach infinity. The barrier started to shrink drastically. This allowed the main Vegeta to finally tear a hole in infinity. Xeno's limitless ability was broken for the first time ever. Space and time stood still for a brief moment. This gave the main Vegeta, now in his Omni form, a chance to finally deliver an attack that counted. Instantly, the 6 clones dropped to their base forms, having used up all the energy given to them. They then merged back with Vegeta. He was now at the pinnacle of his power, with all the energy focused into one final, devastating attack. Vegeta knew this was risky, but he couldn't stop now. This was the final step of his plan, and he had to see it through. even if it meant his death. This technique was called Final Explosion, a self-destructive ultimate attack where Vegeta expended all his energy to create a massive explosion, intending to obliterate his opponent along with himself. This technique was a last resort, often used when Vegeta felt there was no other way to defeat his enemy. However, this wasn't your typical final explosion. No, this time it was on a whole other level. Vegeta was using all the power of his Omniform to unleash this explosion. Like a ticking bomb, the moment counted down. Zeno fell from the sky, hurtling toward the planet. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Zeno collided with the ground, and then Vegeta, who was holding him, exploded. This was the most powerful attack Vegeta had ever executed. The force was so immense that both the Grand Priest and Amuko had to teleport outside of Zeno's pocket dimension to escape it. In fact, Universe 18, which was inside Zeno's pocket dimension, was completely destroyed. At the cost of his life, Vegeta had single-handedly erased an entire universe, all planets, all life, everything was annihilated. Vegeta was dead. He had blown himself up, or at least, that's what should have happened. That's it for this episode, guys. If you've watched to the end, then that may be an indication that you enjoy the episode, so please drop a like so the video could reach more people. See you in the next episode, take care.